Hey, welcome to another installment of Catching Up. I'm Sam.
I'm Chris.
Jay.
And this week, we're going to be talking to John Layman. He does the Hat Trick. He's here to talk about his two new books, his current series, Leviathan, which is kind of this like supernatural tinged horror kaiju level event. And then his new upcoming series, Outer Darkness, which is kind of this like love letter to the entire sci-fi genre. You get shades of Star Trek, shades of, Alien, but you also get shades of the Dirty Dozen. So, but you know what? And, in the denouement, Jake goes to Portland. Chris sees that a film that is the Happy Time Murders. And then Jake and I talk a lot about The Punisher because that's what we do now.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of talk of Slayer.
Yes.
Coming from young Master Jacob.
Yes.
Yeah.
But first, before we get into the Slayer, the Punisher, and all that shit,
Muppets.
and Muppets, let's talk to John. And coming back on the show for the Hat Trick, this is his third time on. John Layman, co-creator of Chew, co-creator.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, how's it going, man? Creator of Leviathan. And creator of his new Image Comics Skybound series, Outer Darkness, out in comic book stores everywhere and on Comixology on Wednesday, November 7th. John, thanks again for coming on the show, man.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So you've got like three very different books going on right now. You've got Charlie's Angels, you've got Leviathan, which is kind of this like satanic kaiju book, which just saying that out loud is like super badass.
Yeah.
And then you've got Outer Darkness, which is kind of like... There's
Satanic Star Trek.
Satanic Star Trek, but there's also like shades of like Alien, there's shades of like Event Horizon. I feel like that's your like love letter, your horror tinged love letter to the entire hard sci-fi genre.
Well, I don't know about hard sci-fi, but yeah, I mean it's the initial pitch was Star Trek with weekly kind of continuing space mission, but with the vibe of Outer Darkness. So pick and choose your favorite space horror movies, and there's not a lot of them. But it's basically every week, instead of coming across Klingons or some optimistic peaceful thing, it's something horrible and trying to kill you. The problem is I can't do straight horror. I get bored with it really quick, and it's just too bleak. So I kind of have to preface this as weird horror instead of straight horror. I mean, I like Walking Dead, but it's straight horror and it's just relentlessly miserable. And I think most true horror kind of is. So I'm calling it weird sci-fi horror.
Yeah, there's like moments, and I love Walking Dead too, but after watching or reading an entire volume or something, I kind of have to go outside and like get ice cream or something. Because
yeah, exactly.
With this, I mean, I know you're a fan of the genre, though. If I remember correctly, weren't you a bigger fan of the Orville than you were Star Trek Discovery?
Well, yeah. To me, the Star Trek Discovery is set in the Star Trek universe, but doesn't feel like Star Trek. Where Orville really feels like Star Trek, but isn't set like a goofy Star Trek, but isn't set in the Star Trek universe. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's got the kind of the liberal optimism, and I don't mean liberal in the modern day political sense. I mean sort of in the classic sense of kind of looking forward and a kind of an optimistic view of the future, which I don't see in Discovery, but Orville definitely kind of has this goofy earnestness about it. So yeah, I'm a fan of the Orville.
Yeah, that was always kind of like the bleaker Star Trek stuff, like say latter period Deep Space Nine, or there was stretches of Voyager where you'd just be like, this is like it was almost like off-putting.
Yeah, but I loved Deep Space Nine. They even but even then, I mean, it was a different storytelling period, and it was kind of I guess a little more toothless by today's comparison. And I think Discovery is trying too hard to be edgy. And granted, you look at Deep Space Nine or even Next Generation, you look at any of them in their first season, they had some kinks to work out. So I'll watch it and hope for the best.
Sure, yeah. So with Outer Darkness, are you and Afu trying to kind of like strike some sort of, you had mentioned weird sci-fi, not as necessarily as relentless, but it's still very much like exploring the unknown, like early Star Trek or like the first two Star Trek series, while keeping one foot more into that horror realm.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's kind of the unknown to the reader, but there, at least there are 3 distinct acts. I'm visualizing this as 3 sort of 12-issue seasons, and the first season they are traveling from one place to the other in known space. So, yes, it's a journey of discovery for us because there's, weird stuff around the corner, but they'll be like, oh, we can't go here. It's a haunted solar system. That's new to the reader, not necessarily new to the crew. They're kind of prepared for what they're encountering largely. You still can't prepare for what ghost is going to be around the corner or what demon or what, possessed thing. But yes, I guess it is traveling the unknown. I mean, space is so vast that even explored space is going to be have a degree of unknown to it.
Right. So you kind of like spend an act essentially world building, and then you get really weird and kind of tear it all down as the stakes escalate. Yes. The first arc is called Each Other's Throats, which is kind of the relationship the crew has to each other. Mm-hmm. Everyone sort of hates each other, and battle lines are drawn, and I guess it's like Voyager in that way, in that it was the Starfleet and the Maquis, and you thought they'd be pitted against each other, but Voyager was so toothless that by the first episode, end of first episode, they were all friends, and disagreements they have are glossed over pretty quick. Again, that was the storytelling of the period, which wasn't that long ago. No, it's kind of like It's kind of wild because I was revisiting a lot of that stuff I was writing some Star Trek think pieces for CBR, and I was like, oh, this was just like the Voyager ended the year before like Star Trek Nemesis, and Star Trek Nemesis was like 7 years before the J.J. Abrams stuff, which in like the grand scheme,
but it was still network TV, and it was kind of pre-Sopranos, Breaking Bad, edgier, smarter serialized TV, which is where we are now. Yeah, no, I mean, and it's weird. It's going to be very interesting because I know they got new showrunners for Discovery. I think because a lot of people were kind of like, well, this is kind of like trying too hard to be like prestige television. Like Star Trek was never quote unquote. I mean, I love Star Trek. It's, I've seen the original series to the point where I can quote, okay, here's a question. Are you more a Picard guy or more a Kirk guy? Well, Picard, but I would say Cisco over the two of them. Yeah, I mean, Deep Space Nine is definitely my favorite, but I'm going on the continuing mission vibe. So he's not technically a captain. He's not technically. He gets promoted though. Yeah, but he's not on a starship. We made the lead. The captain is a black guy, and that was just sort of my, just me blowing a kiss to Ben Sisko, who's my favorite captain. Nice. Or, my favorite lead. Yeah, absolutely. God, now I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch all 7 seasons of Deep Space Nine. But yeah, so like you had kind of observed, there's kind of like satanic or like horror elements, obviously in Outer Darkness. There's that going in Leviathan with kaiju too. What made you kind of want to like coming off of Chew? And I remember you had basically done some projects afterwards, like Judge Dredd versus Predator versus Aliens and stuff. But what made you want to kind of lean more into horror, coming back into it, like especially coming back into Creator Own? Well, I didn't always want to be the funny, goofy guy. I thought, hey, if I'm the funny, goofy guy, I'm only going to get hired to write Deadpool or Harley Quinn. Mm-hmm. As it turns out, I'm not even hired to write that. I spent some post-Chew time trying to get in the door at the Big Two, and I've since given up, and it's really not worth my time. But I've actually come up with 3 things that are all in their heart love stories, but they're also kind of infernal backgrounds. John Carpenter had what he called his Apocalypse trilogy of like Mouth of Madness and The Thing and one other, but he called it his
Prince
Apocalypse
of Darkness.
Trilogy.
Yeah.
Yes. And this to me is my Apocalypse trilogy. The third one I'm still working on, and I like to get I like to get 2 or 3 scripts in before I actually even do anything with it.
Mhm.
I've got the first script written, but I feel like a book doesn't really have its personality until you get a little further. So, there is a third book that's also, a horror thing with some love elements in the background.
Sure. Chew at its core was a tragic love story of sorts, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Chew was definitely a tragedy.
Yeah. Which I think is lost on a lot of people because, Tony loses.
It's covered in goofiness.
Yeah.
It's covered in silliness. And the silliness, it got sillier as it went on because it really got kind of sadder and darker as it went on.
Right. Kind of like the spoonful of sugar to help the medicine go down.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, I can't do straight horror. Leviathan doesn't even try to be straight horror. Leviathan is just me going bonkers with Nick Pitarra because that's the kind of artist he is.
Mm-hmm.
So neither, both of these have, horror overtones, but, horror purists, I don't know. Cabin Fever was funny. Cabin in the Woods was funny. I like, Evil Dead. A lot of horror stuff does have humor to sort of kind of give you a relief from the relentlessness.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm a big fan of Shaun of the Dead, and that at its core, yeah, it's a horror movie, but there's, it's a comedy too. But it's like It doesn't pull its punches with the zombie, elements either. I do have to ask, what's your favorite kaiju film?
Oh, this is weird. I really like Godzilla versus Biollante.
Oh,
I've seen it. I don't know how it holds up, but I always thought Biollante was really cool.
He's the plant Godzilla, right?
Yeah.
Because there was that period where Toho was like, fuck it, it's going to be Godzilla against not quite Godzilla. There's like Space Godzilla, Mecha Godzilla, Plant Godzilla.
Yeah. And I was a big fan of Space Godzilla too, but that wasn't my favorite movie. I liked a lot of the ones in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Shin Godzilla was fantastic. Do you see that?
I've been meaning to. I remember seeing like images and I'm like, that actually looks like terrifying. Like Godzilla hasn't been terrifying since like Godzilla 85, and like.
Well, it was also a weird political satire. It was almost like a Japanese Adam Sorkin movie because the first half an hour when the monsters attack, you've got a lot of bureaucrats, sitting around a table like planning stuff and talking really fast, and literally everyone gets a line, and every time someone says a line and then someone else does really fast, and every time they do it the camera moves, and it's like getting whiplash, and just from a direction standpoint, it's bolder than any Godzilla I've ever seen, and it really tries to be something different from, I guess, an auteur standpoint. Like the director, it's not just a straight monster movie. It's just this. They all kind of have political commentary, but this one's a lot more fast paced.
Yeah, I was always a fan of. I need to see that. I'm actually really excited for the Godzilla King of Monsters coming out next year.
Yeah.
I'm seeing more and more images of that, and just like, my favorite is, honest to God, like the first Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla from like 1972. Where he teams up with King Caesar, who they have to wake up with a song, and then he awakens from his slumber and gets his ass kicked. I relate a lot to that. That's my. I see that. I'm like, oh, I get that. I totally understand. But how did both? Let's kind of go into the genesis of all this. How did Outer Darkness and your partnership with Afu kind of come about?
Well, Outer Darkness was in development. Like it was supposed to follow Chew immediately, and I was working on it as I was wrapping Chew. But it took a while. Like I said, I like to have a few scripts in the can before I do anything with it, which isn't the smartest thing to do financially. Mm-hmm. But I think I had I don't know, 2 or 3 issues in the can, and I started like kind of looking for artists and talking to friends, and I'm a really bad salesman. It's like, well, I've got this, and it's it's kind of a Star Trek ripoff, and I don't sell it very good. I didn't sell Chew very good, and eventually, one day Kirkman called me for something completely unrelated, and it was after a day I'd been dealing with a lot of Chew business stuff, which there's more than you think. I gotta sign off on paper stock, and here's read the box text for this statue, and sign off on the indicia for Polish Volume 8. And it's like, yeah, man, I just want to write comics. And I thought, you know what, Skybound, I didn't write this to be a TV series. I write for comics, but I got this thing, and it would be a good TV show. I don't care about that, but somebody might. And if I'm talking to the guy with the number one horror guy with TV connections, that's Kirkman, and he's got his own company, and it still happens to be under Image. The idea is I write a messed up Star Trek episode every month, and it automatically turns into a comic book where I don't have to worry about all the business stuff, but still have a stake in it. Mm-hmm. So I pitched it to him on the phone. He wanted to call about something else, and I'm like, oh, hey, as long as I got you. He liked the idea, and more or less the next day it was approved. And then came the very long hunt for an artist. And I swear, probably the first time I was on this show, it was approved, but I didn't have an artist. And it took a long time. We thought we had someone, and then they fell through. And then we were back to square one. And I mean, we looked for 9 or 10 months before, me and the editors, and then Kirkman stepped in with a list of really kind of weird names. And I wasn't really familiar with Afu. We fell in love, but at the time he was doing that Iron Fist thing. So not only did it take forever to get him, but then he had to work through his commitments. And then, Skybound wanted to get, 5 or 6 issues in the can before it came out. So we've been working on it for a long time, and yet 2 years after Chew, it's finally seeing the light of day.
Yeah, damn. I had no idea that there was that long, damn. I mean,
yeah, it's not ideal. And when I call work for hire editors, they're like, "Yeah, where you been? Doesn't look like you've been doing comics." And it's like, ugh, some books happen fast. Leviathan got off the ground fast, and then we took our time. We decided last summer. Nick and I did it. We pitched it to Image. That was pretty much a slam dunk. And then we decided we'd do it next summer to get well ahead, like on Outer Darkness. The difference being we didn't get well ahead. Nick's one of these guys who works best under pressure, so he kind of likes to have a sword swinging on his neck for him to work best and fastest. So he's a guy who likes the adrenaline of looming disastrous deadlines in front of him, which I get all Murtaugh Riggs, and I'm just thinking I'm too old for this shit, man. This is how I worked in my 20s at Wildstorm.
Yeah, that's right, because you come from an editorial background where deadlines are the life or death.
No, I came from Wildstorm in the 90s, where deadlines were largely overlooked, and this is how we ran things. This was back in the days of film, pre-digital, and we would be outputting film at 5:45, and then FedEx was downtown to buy that extra half hour, so they'd hand some runner the keys to the car and basically say, hey, go 90 miles an hour. If you get a ticket, we'll pay for it. And you would get in there at 6:29 p.m. with those films to get the film off to Canada to print the book. Things are a little different now. Pressing a button and uploading to an FTP.
Yeah,
but it's the same principle. It's getting the shit done at the last minute, which is how the Leviathan crew operates. And it's a little stressful, but I can't deny the work. Nick is doing next level work. It's just the way his mind works. It's like I said, he needs the adrenaline rush.
Yeah, the grace under pressure, the back up against the wall, whatever metaphor.
Yeah.
How did because you've already got a Leviathan plush through Skeleton Crew? How did that all kind of come about?
Yeah. Well, I talk to the Skeleton Crew people pretty regularly, and they're real supportive. And they asked me, what am I working on, and I showed them, and they're like, oh, that would make a cool plush. And we didn't completely take it seriously. We're like, hey, if Nick can get some designs, maybe we can have a prototype, to advertise it for the first issue. Lo and behold, we got it, and now I've got a preview one, I'm touching it right now, on my desk, and it looks amazing. Skeleton Crew, they're fantastic. I mean, they do super high quality work, and they like Chew, and they seem to like our other stuff. I think they're doing some farmhand stuff, and when we met them, I think they were just doing Mouse Guard and Lock and Key, and then us, and now they're doing Huck and Hellboy, and every time Headlopper, like every time I turn around, they've got like some new like cool image book. So they got pretty good taste.
Yeah, you led the charge there, man. You totally led the charge.
Yeah.
Now I have
just like Image. I mean, we kind of did the Image resurgence, and then Deadly Class and Saga and Sex Criminal and all these other books came along that sold a lot better.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess they just needed you to open the door. I remember because I was doing when I wrote the 25th anniversary special for last year. I'm going through like the entire catalog, and I was like, oh my god, it's Chew, fucking Chew. It's the one that like The Walking Dead's fine, but The Walking Dead, it takes the TV show for people to for that thing to really explode. And
well, I mean, it was Morning Glories, it was Manhattan Projects. We were all part of something. Chew definitely was part of the resurgence.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, this is going to be completely left field, but I got to know, how the hell did Charlie's Angels come about?
Oh, I talked to Matt Idelson irregularly, and he called me up, and he and I have been wanting to work together for a long time, and it's like, I don't like to do work for hire unless it feels like it's moving forward. And he's like, I've done Red Sonja, I've done Army of Darkness, I've done Xena, and he calls me up, he's like, why aren't we doing something together? And it's like, well, Dynamite doesn't have anything I want right now that isn't taken. What do you got? And he's like, well, we got Charlie's Angels. That could be fun. 70s Charlie's Angels. And I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. That could be. And then he's like, and I'm looking at Joe Eisma for the art. And Joe and I have been friends for a long time. And like the opportunity to work with an editor you like on a property that's fun with a buddy, why not? And at the time, I'm twiddling my thumbs waiting for Outer Darkness and Leviathan to hit. And it's like, kind of just took it for a gig that would be fun. And it has been. Yeah.
Everybody always lauds Farrah Fawcett, but I was always about that Kate Jackson.
Oh, Jacqueline Smith for me.
Yeah, nice.
Which maybe is why she has the largest role. But yeah, it's been it's been real fun. We did 5 issues, and they talked about doing more, but again, what's another? I did 15 issues of Mars Attacks, and I kind of got flattered into it, and I think by the end that might have been a mistake. So we're talking to Dynamite. We would like to keep the crew together. But I don't want to do anything unless it feels like it's moving forward.
Yeah. Who's got the
in terms of work for hire. I like to, scratch bucket lists, scratch things off my bucket list.
Was the Leviathan really getting the chance to work with Nick Pitarra? And how did that kind of partnership come about?
Oh, so Nick and I don't really remember this. Nick, I was looking for artists pre-Chew, and we were both on the Miller World board, and I guess I called him and said I liked his stuff, but he just got a Marvel gig, and I was working a job, and it was just, we kind of called each other and said, hey, I like you, and then, disappeared for a couple of years, and then Manhattan Projects blew up, and Chew blew up, and we started seeing each other at shows, and, we're both a couple jackasses at shows after hours, with with alcohol and such.
I've participated in some of that, yes, with you.
And Nick is like, oh, remember that time you called me? And I'm like, well, no, actually, but, that's cool. I like hearing stories about how I wasn't a dick. And we've always talked about wanting to work together. And at one point, he even wanted to hand me a Manhattan Projects and page an original art. And I'm like, no, dude, as much as I like Manhattan Projects, save this until the day we actually work together and then give me a page. And, we'd always been talking about it. And I guess, he and Hickman wanted a break from Manhattan Projects. So he called me up before last con last year and said, hey, do you want to do something? Let's get it together for San Diego Con. So I wanted to come up with something that would really showcase his art. And really at everything in the kitchen sink kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But something I could put together pretty fast, and it would be really a visual spectacle, really kind of artist driven. I just come up with, crazy shit for Nick to draw.
Sure.
And so, we thought a monster book would be great. We both love Jeff Darrow, but, the twist is what could be different? Oh, he's it's a infernal monster instead of something through science or nuclear or the typical stuff. Well, you get Godzilla.
Yeah. You kind of also I can only assume, and without going into too heavy spoilers for the series, there's also kind of an Orpheus thing, the hero has to venture into hell to for a greater cause or for something that he's lost. And there just happens to be a giant Godzilla-sized demon thing in his way,
Yeah, you just described the second arc.
Cool. I think you, if I remember correctly, I don't know if I can take full credit for that, but because I remember when we were shooting the shit. Is it really the last time I saw you Emerald City? Because I didn't do San Diego this year.
Unless you went to Chicago, which I don't think you did.
I didn't. I was invited, but that's such a small show, and I couldn't get off of my, my day job working at
C2E2 is a small show.
Comparatively.
Okay.
The only reason I do Awesome Con in Baltimore is because they're right here, right where I live. But I couldn't get off from the day job for C2E2, but I would have. Yeah, but I remember we were shooting the breeze about Leviathan, and you were like, "This arc deals with this, and this arc deals with this."
Yeah. Well, it's the two arcs that they're companions, and we've already first one's Till Death Do Us Part, and then the second one's Honeymoon in Hell. So take that however you will.
Mm. And you had kind of always envisioned that, whereas you're thinking approximately 36, 3 arcs for Out of Darkness. Leviathan was always just the nature of the story. It was going to be a much shorter run.
Yeah, well, part of it was Nick. Nick called me up and he said, "You have me for a year." Eventually he wants to go to back to Manhattan Project. So I'm like, I want a beautiful, oversized hardcover that has the entire, book. And now Nick and I are talking about even going further if sales and the partnership warrant. I do have a third storyline beyond 10, but we'll wait and see. But definitely, it was just envisioned originally as 10 issues, whereas Outer Darkness, not as long or as epic as Chew, but it was definitely sort of my next, big, opus. And I don't want to do 60 issues again, but I figure I want to do specials here and there, mm-hmm. Ideally between arcs. So, maybe by the end it ends up being, 42 or, 40 or something like that. But, minimum of 36 if it just went straight. But, I do have some other things planned.
Well, I remember you had kind of done that with the Poyo specials with Chew, right?
Yeah. We did 60 issues plus 3 Poyos and then Chew Revival. So, technically 64 issues if you want to get technical.
Right. The 2 away from the Preacher number, I guess, not counting their spin-offs. But
did they have 64?
I think it was like 66, and then there was, or was it 60 even plus there was a Saint of Killers special?
Like all of the ones that I kind of modeled after were either 60 or close. Preacher, Scalped, Why the Last Man, Transmet.
Oh God, Transmet, yeah.
All those felt like they were about 60.
Yeah. Because I remember, as much as I loved Sandman, it didn't necessarily need to run for 75.
Yeah, that was a novelist book, and as much as I like Sandman, it does get its head stuck up its ass a few times.
Yeah.
Which is what I wanted to avoid by, I've always thought that shows get better when they announce an ending.
Mm-hmm.
So when you know how long it's going to be and have something to work towards, I think that always helps, anything, whether it's TV or books or anything, it's, because eventually if you just want to keep it going forever, you just spin your wheels eventually. And I'd rather leave the audience wanting more than, to have them kind of drift off because they're bored.
Right. And you had you knew how Chew was going to end before the first issue even dropped.
I know how Outer Darkness is going to end.
And Leviathan. Well, certainly Leviathan if it's running for about a third as long.
Yep.
So I think it was Stephen King that once said once admitted that he doesn't necessarily always know how a book is going to end when he sits down to start writing it. And as much as I love Stephen King, for some of those books, it, shows.
There is a point where you allow some latitude, but I always go in with I got to have a rough idea. I can't imagine getting to the end and just panicking.
Right. Well, I'm trying to, you had mentioned the kind of lean to horror and the emphasis on romance, or just the core of there being a love story. And if you think about it,
love's different than romance, Sam. You may be too young to realize that.
That's true. That's true. No ring on this finger yet, but I'm trying to, because that's something that's throughout all of your work. It's in Chew. It's certainly in Leviathan from Jump. I can only assume it shows up over the course of Outer Darkness, like you were saying.
Yeah. You've got a guy who basically inherits a starship. Inherits the captaincy, and he's got a mission that he's assigned, but he's got his own mission, and that involves a lost love.
Well, I'm trying to, So there are ulterior motives, and unlike, say, the starships of Star Trek, like you were saying, everybody is at odds with each other, really, from Jump with Outer Darkness.
Yeah.
So it's, I'm trying to think if
there are very few friends. There are very few people who get along. There are some alliances that form through the course of the book, but in general, a lot of them hate each other. And in a place like this, when people can be possessed and things like that, who do you trust ultimately?
Right. That way, it's kind of like the Thing in space in a certain way.
Yeah.
And it also kind of reminded me, especially as the crew is starting to form in this debut issue, it kind of reminds me of the Dirty Dozen. They're very good at their jobs, but they will not hesitate to kill you if the situation warrants it.
Yeah.
Or sometimes
it's either that or they stab you in the back and you get killed later. And it's I don't know if every writer does this, but when I went in, I figured out the crew and literally came up with a really elaborate backstory for each. Every single character has their own secrets, their own motivations. Everyone ultimately does, but it's an ensemble book. So, there might be a Geordi episode, there might be a Deanna Troi episode, just as Star Trek did that, there's an overall, arc propelling the story, but there's also, it definitely jumps around, and focuses on different characters.
Is that, had you created kind of like a series Bible, a similar size series Bible for, say, Chew?
No, not really. I had some things written. I knew where certain characters ended up, but a lot of it was discovery. like Caesar, which actually that Caesar's a bad example because while he was cool, he never had a backstory that was fleshed out, and maybe that's because I didn't really have one other than he was secretly working with Savoy.
Right. Yeah. That was about it. And then, oh God, I'm trying to think of like everything that, a lot of those romances was Tony's partner always going to kind of fall in like, what is the thing that surprised you the most? Here we are. I know we already did the post game about this time last year, but what is the big character thing that surprised you from across all 60 issues of Chew?
Well, probably Poyo was definitely the unexpected character that people loved, and they still do. And the joke of Poyo ran pretty thin with me towards the end. People are like, "Oh, you got to come back, do another Poyo special." And I just kind of groan because he's more of a concept than a character. I think I really succeeded with the sister Tony because I wanted to make her absolutely lovable and then break everyone's heart by killing her, and I did, to the point where it was hard to let. I mean, she was my favorite character in Chew, and she died in issue 30.
Yeah.
And she was introduced in issue 15, but she still played a really significant role, in flashbacks and after she was dead.
Yeah. That and Amelia were probably the two most heartbreaking moments across that entire 60-issue run.
Yeah, well, Colby too. Tony basically lost everybody.
Yeah. And though I always thought it was kind of sneaky that you did the fake out with Amelia and then ended up doing it anyway.
yeah. That was a bit of a bastard move, and I sometimes I look back on 50 and I don't know if I necessarily needed to twist the knife that hard, but not everything can be 100%. I do have small regrets like that. Not overall, I don't regret anything, but there's a couple little things like, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 things in the course of the entire book. Like, I don't know, did I do that right? But I'd say my batting average was pretty high for that book, so I can live with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, speaking of Chew and your kind of like your writing style, you had written issues of Chew out of order. Are you kind of doing similar things with Outer Darkness?
It was funny because I can't remember what issues I turned in. I definitely turned in 1 and 2, and then I thought something was missing, and I actually wrote a new number 2 to slide in between 1 and 3, and it actually works much, much better. It feels much more cohesive. It would have felt more like a disjointed ensemble if it would have gone issue 1, issue 3. Mm-hmm. And so, I like kind of looked at it with an editor's eye, and it's like, well, 1's great and 3's great on their own, but there's still something missing. And so like I said, I came in with this kind of like bridge adventure that really kind of seals everything, and kind of 2 almost, 1 is the setup, you meet the ship, you meet the captain, you meet the big players, but 2 is sort of the mission statement. Like, here's the crew, this is space, this is what it's like. And then, 3 is like, okay, and this is what, a weekly episode's going to be like. Right.
Was that something you would say was kind of a unexpected benefit of the long development time?
Yeah, definitely. Certainly don't have that kind of luxury with Leviathan. I could write ahead, but I'm only going to write so far ahead. And I've told the Skybound editors I will stay 5 issues ahead of Afu. When he turns in issue 5, I'll turn in issue 10. When he, etc., which is still by comic book standards, pretty great.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah. So, John, I have to ask our signature question. I feel like for the first time, it won't be the same answer.
All right.
What are you currently geeking out over?
Oh, fuck.
It's not Garden Warfare 2 anymore, is it?
No, it's Warcraft. I came back. I played for 10 or 11 years straight, and then Warlords of Draenor came out, and I just hated Garrison upkeep. And I let it go, and went back to video games, played Plants vs. Zombies and Zero Horizon Dawn, and this latest expansion came out, and it's like, you know what? I got to try it again. and I've been having a blast. And not only, like, I didn't really play Warlords of Draenor that much, and the new one's Battle for Azeroth, I didn't realize there's a whole expansion that I blew off and missed. So I've got the equivalent of 3 expansions worth of content, and it's I really kind of like rediscovered my love for the game.
What's your main? Is it like a horde, like a shaman or something?
So all my characters are horde. Horde is where it's at. But like I said, I'd stopped playing between issues or levels. My 4 main characters were between 90 and 100. And I don't know how much you know about Warcraft, but they did this thing called Cataclysm, where they kind of like redid the map. And I had played those 4 characters, but I hadn't played Alliance since pre-Cataclysm. And even though Alliance sucks and everyone who plays Alliance is a dick, I made an Alliance character just because the content would kind of be different, and it would be like kind of like seeing a new familiar place through a fresh pair of eyes. So I've been playing an Alliance character, recognizing that makes me a horrible person, but in my head I'm RPing him as a horde spy. So I'm a rogue, and I started from the beginning because I'm anal, and it was originally going to be like a nostalgia tour, just to kind of play all these old dungeons and revisit these old areas. But now I'm level 90 and having a blast, and I signed up for 3 months, and I'm thinking, well, we'll see how Red Dead Redemption goes, but I might stick with this for a while.
Yeah. So it's a rogue. Is it like a human rogue? Is it a elf?
It's a night elf rogue.
Yeah. No, I
like sneaking. They can sneak and backstab and pickpocketing, and then I'm in these old areas, so there's not a lot of people wandering around. But I like griefing people. I like even someone more powerful than me, I will stab them in the back and get killed just to screw with people.
Yeah. Just troll the entire raid or whatever.
I love it.
I had played World of Warcraft right when it first came. I want to say it was 2003, 2004.
Yeah, long time ago.
Yeah, and I had a human paladin because I'm not very original, and I had a Tauren shaman because that was like the equivalent. And I haven't played it since Cataclysm. I've heard great things. I just burned out, and it felt like the decisions were to dumb it down. But now going back to it from level 1, starting anew, I can kind of see where they kind of have to streamline it when there's this, this much mammoth, of content. So that's the thing. I'm loving Headlopper. I'm loving Stray Billets. I just picked up Mike Norton's Little Donnie today. Oh yeah.
I'm mostly reading Image Comics these days, which I mostly am. In fact, I don't think I'm reading much Marvel or DC at all right now, especially since I've kind of given up on writing for them. It's like, well, fuck it. I've never been that much of a superhero guy anyways. I'm just going to concentrate on weird indie stuff because that's what I like.
Yeah, I tend to stay on the fringes when it comes to the big two. Like, Mr. Miracle is like the best book that and of course, you and I both know Donnie. Whatever Donnie writes, I tend to kind of peek over the fence. It's like, I was never the biggest Venom guy, but let's see what he's doing over here.
Yeah, I'll peek at what Donnie's doing, and I'm happy for his much rather read Redneck or what's the baby? Oh, Baby Teeth. If I got to pick between a book that the money goes straight into his pocket versus going into the pocket of a corporation. I'll pick the indie book anytime.
Yeah, Donnie
That
wins.
being said, he's doing great work at Marvel.
Oh yeah, fantastic stuff. I remember Stray Bullets was always a big influence. That was one of your favorite books of all time.
It is my favorite book of all times, and I just did a reread, and it has a full reread because I always fall behind on my books. I'm always 6 or 7 issues behind, and then I read them in chunks, and a lot of times because I'm anal, I like to, pick it up from the beginning and read it. So I read all of the first volume, and, they're on issue 40 or so of the new Sunshine and Roses, and it hasn't lost a step. It's still, it has my highest recommendation as the best comic there is.
Nice. Well, John, before I return you to the wilds of the American Southwest, which I have to imagine, like, especially with this summer, has just been, like, unbearable.
It's unbearable every year. You think it's the worst year, and then you remember every year has just been just as bad.
Oh, God.
Wait till the water wars come and we're living in Mad Max.
Yeah. I call Bartertown. Like,
yeah.
That'll be my lot in life. But yeah, before I return you to the wilds of the American Southwest, anything you want to tease with Outer Darkness or Leviathan?
No, I mean, just it's nice to be on the bookshelves again. I mean, it was a nice kind of wading back into it with Charlie's Angels, but these are actually my books, and they're both really beautiful in a different way. I mean, Nick Pitarra is like human cocaine, and it's it's really it's like the movie Speed or Crank or something like that. I mean, that's what we're going for, and that's what the book is. Whereas Outer Darkness is more like, Chew was a precision book where every panel, every word, everything has meaning. Mm-hmm. And so it's weird to be writing two different styles of books and have them both be, completely beautiful in their own way.
Yeah. Well, it's got to be like. Well, you had taken. I was trying to think, because you took a break from Chew when you were writing Detective, right?
Oh, not a break. I just fell behind.
Okay.
No, I never took a break, and that was the problem. I quit Detective because suddenly, like, Rob's on page 16 at Chew saying, "Where's the next issue?" And it's like, "Oh, I'm writing a Catwoman special. I'm writing Clayface," and that's nice, but ultimately, Chew's going to be paying me 10 or 20 years from now, and my little Clayface special isn't. So I kind of woke up and realized that, I'm not fast enough. Something had to give. So that's why I left, the Bat books, figuring I could always come back.
Right.
Since that's not true. But that's also steered me. It's like, well, look, I was never born to be a superhero guy. It was fun while it lasted. I got bragging rights. But, end of the day, you do what you work the hardest at. They tell me no, and I'm not very persistent, but I'm, I sure like doing my own stuff.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, to that point, it's got to be, kind of almost an interesting challenge to balance two vastly different books at the same time.
Yeah. Well, they, like I said, they are different. Like, I have to go into a real gonzo brain space for Leviathan because, I swear the first 5 issues take place in a 24-hour period. I mean, it's just relentlessly fast, and it might be less than that. It might be a 14 or 16-hour period.
Right.
Monster attacks, all this crazy shit happens, and then the book ends.
Yeah.
I mean, at least the first arc.
Yeah. And then apparently we have Dinner in Hell for arc 2. So yeah. Definitely looking forward to it all, man. But yeah. So. Again,
let me know
well, like I was going to say, but listeners at home, by the time you hear this, the first 2 issues of Leviathan For All That Madcap Energy will be out. And the first issue of Outer Darkness is out on Wednesday, November 7th. John, thanks again for coming on the show, man.
Yeah, Sam, it's always a pleasure. I hope to see you sometime soon.
Always a good time talking to the mighty Layman.
Yeah.
Jake, you went on a voyage, a transcontinental voyage, the kind of shit that would kill people like 100 years ago.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And I lived to tell the tale.
Yeah.
And you came back.
Yeah.
But oddly enough, still with dysentery.
Yeah, well, that was pre-existing condition. I went to the West Coast to see, more importantly, 2 of my best friends on the planet, Ethan and Corey, and also a bunch of other lovely image people as well. Sasha and Ali and whatnot. I went to go see Slayer again on this second leg of their Final World Tour. Chris, the only difference is that they take out Behemoth and put in Napalm Death.
Yeah.
And I saw all the bands this time.
Oh,
we planned it.
Nice
we planned it.
So you saw Testament.
Yeah, I finally saw Testament. They were fucking Baruta. It was just fucking amazing, dude. Like, we got there a song or two into Napalm Death set. They opened the show. not super familiar with them. They're a band that you always hear their name. Great name, great logo. And just a crazy fucking metal band from the UK that just like they were just nonstop. Like they were just this like we got to our seats, really good seats, and like just this fucking barrage of just heavy. They did their infamous song "You Suffer," which is the shortest song of all time. It's a second long. And so they played that, and then they played "Dead," which is like technically 6 or 7 seconds long. And so it's funny because they come out and they were like, the lyrics to "You Suffer" are "You suffer, but why?" But it sounds more like, and he's like, and then they played "Dead," which honestly I don't even know the lyrics. I think it just sounds like it just says "fuck" for 6 seconds. We could say "dead" for 6 seconds or 7 seconds. I don't know, whatever. Anyway, they did that, and he was like, "How do you like them apples?" He goes, "Too many epics, I shit you not." Because originally, I just thought it was like 2 little breakdowns, like bam, bam, like in between songs. And I was like, "Oh fuck!" So that like totally piqued my interest. I was like, "Dude, that's fucking hilarious and awesome." And so I've been listening to them the most post show, listening to them a lot actually. And then good old Testament, which unfortunately we missed last time. They were just fucking insane, man. Like they were just like perfect thrash. And got the place going with Into the Pit, of course. They had the lawn open for this one, and so the pit was in front of us and behind us.
Oh.
And it was just fucking nuts, man. They just like, I don't know, man. Like they're just one of those bands that just quality fucking metal since like day one, man. And I've always really enjoyed the song "The Preacher." Nothing to do with the comic book, but just one of my favorite riffs of all time. And of course they played that one. And then we went into Anthrax territory, which they were great. The only bummer was this time they didn't play "I Am the Law." But
didn't they know you were in the audience?
Yeah, right. But they were just having a fucking blast, dude. Like they're the fun, like they're like the band that just has like they're all about the fun in metal. Not saying the other bands aren't, but like that's like they're just that sound, that energy they have. I mean, Joey grabbed the
They don't take themselves too seriously.
Yeah, I mean, like Joey grabbed the fucking camera at one point and was like videotaping the audio, taping digitally, blah, 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 the audience with the camera, and just having a fucking blast, man. And then Lamb of God came on before Slayer, and that's like Corey, like one of Corey's favorite bands of all time. Like she was going fucking crazy, dude. It was awesome. And just screaming along.
You witnessing her was like me witnessing you freaking out to Slayer.
Oh yeah, it was nuts, man. Like she was just going fucking crazy. Cause I don't know Lamb of God that well, but they sounded just as good. Like they just brought
local boys.
Yeah, they just brought the fucking heavy, and it was crazy, man. And then Slayer came out and just fucking went crazy again, man. Like it was, dude, it was awesome. People were just yelling at left and right, and it was, I mean, just the flame, the pyrotechnics, they just were on point. And I did not realize this when we saw them, but it was their second to last U.S. show ever.
Oh.
Well, I'm guessing ever, because they have a European, and then they added some other stuff, like Japan and other shows into 2019. But never say never, but like the emotion was there because they finished with Angel of Death. They all have their moment, and then Tom was the last one on stage. Tom Araya, vocalist, bassist, and he seemed to like have trouble saying thank you to the crowd. Like seemed to get a little emotional, kind of surveying it one final time, which is really cool because like Slayer asked so much of all of their members, obviously, but like his voice just sounds so fucking good still, like just as good as when we saw him, and just as good as like when I would watch live DVDs, but Still Raining back in the day, or the Decade of Aggression, live album they did back in the 90s or whatever it was, just fucking on point. And like he always hits that fucking Angel of Death scream at the end, like he just saves just enough for that last thing and just lets it all out. So it was really cool, man. Like and it was cool to see him with Corey. He was a huge metalhead as well. Ethan has seen plenty of metal bands and enjoys metal as well, so like it was cool just hanging out with them and just spending basically a day preparing, and then like 6 straight hours of just pure metal. It was a total treat seeing them again, because I figured for sure when I went with Chris and company that was it. And so it was a nice kind of like
I'm trying to think. When did you end up booking all of this again?
I don't even remember. Sometime in
Was it right after San Diego or right before?
it was before San Diego because I remember talking to Corey and Stang about it at San Diego. So yeah, it was before. It was a little bit before San Diego Comic-Con. So yeah, it was a fucking blast. And then we the three of us like became obsessed with pinball machines. Like we went to this place called Quarter World. Shout out to Quarter World and Ground Control. Ground Control with a K.
Very 90s.
Yeah, and it was cool because I haven't been to an arcade in 20 years or something. I don't know. It's been a fucking long ass time. And so we decided on Friday we were going to go to this place called Quarter World, and it was like a bar/arcade. There were some games there that I haven't thought about in like 20 years. Like I went in there and I was like, Sunset Riders? The fuck out of here, dude.
Sunset Riders.
I definitely was jammed to some Sunset Riders for a couple quarters, couple dollars.
They have Burger Time.
I don't think so. That was not on my radar.
Barcade in Brooklyn does have Burger Time.
So does my favorite barcades in Charlotte.
Nice.
They're big in like the hipster areas,
Oh,
of
yeah.
which Portland certainly qualifies.
Absolutely. But they had like a shitload of pinball machines at both. Ground Control was nuts. Like that was like multiple levels, multiple rooms. I mean, Quarter World had that too, but like it was like big time. But I got to play the Judge Dredd pinball machine. I had no idea what was going on, but it was fun. Just staring at the artwork.
Did they have the Dirty Harry one where
No.
instead of pulling? Oh, okay.
I wish they had the Shadow, though, Chris, where you fire the 45 to launch the ball, and it was fun, even though the movie sucks. So yeah, it was cool. I mean, it was cool. Like there was a bunch of old like Star Wars games I hadn't played in a long time.
Oh, like Star Wars Arcade, where like you pick which episode you want to do.
Yeah, and I got farther than I've ever gotten in my
Ooh.
entire life.
I'm assuming you picked Empire.
Well, I did all of them.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
Mr.
So
Big Dick over here.
yeah, man, watch out. It was just a fucking blast. I mean, and then Friday was Quarter World and Saturday was Ground Control. I also did Top Golf for the first time on Wednesday. Cemented that I am still terrible at golf. Got my swing back just in time to hit like the last two balls. But no, it was fun, and then we went bowling and stuff. It was like basically
We gotta
like
do batting cages before they close again.
yeah. It was like being like a 90s like kid and being like, oh, that's right, we're adults with money. We can go have fun whenever. And so it was just a fucking blast, man. It was a great trip, and it was great to just go. And like I said, obviously I love doing the shows and everything, but it was nice to just hang out with Corey and the Image people and not have to worry about a show. Yeah. And just fucking have fun. We rewatched. Ethan hadn't seen Thor Ragnarok and
Justice League.
we didn't do Infinity War. So we watched Thor Ragnarok and Infinity War, and we watched like John Wick, and we saw Rampage, the Rock movie.
Yeah.
Quite enjoyable. Just
Right?
fun as fuck, man.
Right?
Fun as fuck. But and also spoilers for that movie for everyone listening. I loved what they did with Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Like, thought for sure he was going to be like the bad guy from the beginning, and then like him and The Rock have like a tough guy bro, like, thanks for saving my life, and then he's like team fucking Rock the rest of the movie, which was cool. Yeah. It was a bummer that, I mean, you could see it from a mile away that Joe Manganiello was going to die in like 10 minutes basically, which he did. But he had a cool scar on his face and was like a badass for like 10 minutes. But yeah, no, it was a perfect trip, and it was a bummer to come back, but gotta pay the bills. Gotta pay the bills with the fucking podcast somehow, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
All that podcast money.
Yeah. So that's all I gotta say.
Yeah, you guys at home don't see it, but the Geek Out Studios are actually like the Scrooge McDuck vault.
It's impressive that I was able to get it so that the noise isn't ringing off all the golden coins.
Remember that? I don't know if you remember that moment in Family Guy where like Peter goes to jump into the gold, like Scrooge McDuck, and he lands and just shatters all of his bones, and he goes, "It's a solid, not a liquid."
You remember when like Latour would get entire bags of like Werther's Originals and just pour them out?
Oh yeah,
over his head, and just say that he was Scrooge McDuckin.
That's right.
I do not.
He has been known.
I'll believe you.
Chris, you getting anything? I know you saw a film.
I did. I saw a little film with friend of the show and former co-host of or I guess co-host of former Geek Out show Laserdicks. Yeah, just because I know Jake wasn't paying attention.
I wasn't. I don't care. I don't care anymore. I said my thing. I don't care about anything else.
But yeah, Ken and I went to go see the Happy Time Murders.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm curious. What do you think?
I was actually pleasantly surprised. I famously do not care for Melissa McCarthy.
I don't care for.
No, I don't. But I felt like she was very kind of reined in this movie.
Yeah, she seemed to be like the straight man.
Yeah.
Not like the funny one.
Pretty much. I mean, you're in a movie full of Muppets, so humans kind of have to be the straight man, I guess. But yeah, so yeah, it was like a very like dark and adult version of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but with Muppets, because they were Muppets, because it's a Henson alternative film.
Only one.
Yeah, the only Henson alternative. Probably gonna be the only one, because Sam was pointing out before we started recording, they only made what, like 10 million?
Just under 10 million its opening weekend on a 40 million budget.
Yeah.
And comedies, especially, I'm sure Muppet comedies don't tend to do well overseas.
Yeah. So there's that. Yeah, but I, like I said, pleasantly surprised. I enjoyed myself. There was lots of giggling coming from my section, and we went with one of our friends, Kira, and she was laughing her ass off at all the raunchy humor. I was enjoying myself. Ken, I heard him guffaw a couple times. Yeah, it's some good stuff. You don't see any Henson
Penis?
Yeah, classic characters. You do see Puppet Vagine, if that counts for anything.
Okay.
For you there, Sam.
All right.
Since you're the one that yelled out penis.
Yeah, but that's not a penis.
No, it is not. I actually don't recall if you see any peen. Yeah. There were birds though.
The search continues.
But yeah, star-studded cast though. A lot of the what's his name? I feel terrible. Stanley from The Office.
Stan Lee?
Yeah, Stan Lee from The Office is in it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Boy, have you lost your mind? Because I'll help you find it.
Yeah. Help you find Jesus.
Yeah. But it's
But on pretzel day?
It's pretzel day.
Yeah.
It's hentai and it's art.
Why don't we, stand up with our microphones and act like fucking stand-up comedians? We should do that one time. Just walk around and fucking just walk around this place with our microphones in our hands.
What's the deal with?
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. It's like, I finished Greg Ruck with Punisher, That's pretty funny.
Man, I just wish I was an alien. With the and the and the I'm pretty sure that's word for word a Dane Cook bit.
Yeah. Same amount of Coke energy, I would say. Woo! You guys got all the good ones, all the good comedians. I was just trying to. I guess I was trying to channel Seinfeld.
Yeah, I heard. What is the deal?
Yeah.
They call her Spider Gwen. Why isn't he called Spider Peter?
She's not Spider Gwen anymore. She's like Ghost Spider or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dick.
Well, I wrote that joke when she was still Spider Gwen.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there you go.
So did Latour. So from our most recent talk with the gentleman, he was like, I wasn't even the one that came up with that pun. The internet was, and that kind of pissed him off. He's like, I'm known for my puns, and I didn't come up with that one. So,
yeah, I finished Greg Ruckus Punisher.
That's a good run.
It was very good. It was.
I love the way it starts, because it's a kind of a truncated. It was never a big sales hit, and so the last arc, you kind of get the feeling he's just tying up loose ends.
Yeah, it kind of does whoop. But some great moments. Two of my favorite quotes.
Do you like bearded one-eyed Frank?
Yeah, I mean it's cool. It's definitely cool. But I like my Frank looking like he just fucking fell off a building.
You don't think you would have one eye and maybe a beard if you fell off a building?
Well, you do grow a beard when you fall off a building.
Proven fact.
Yeah, I do enjoy a good one eye patch thing. That's cool. And it makes sense, like the beard. Like I was like, how why a beard? Why the longer hair? It totally makes sense when you read the book. I was just curious how they got there. And the art is fucking gorgeous.
Marco Cicchetto.
Yeah, fucking gorgeous Punisher shit. Two of my favorite moments though. Two of my favorite quotes. One is when he's giving Rachel the vest and he's like, put the skull on, it terrifies him. That's a great fucking line. And when he's talking to Spider-Man, I love how much Greg Rucka writes how much Spider-Man hates Frank Castle. Like there's not like a hey buddy. It's like this guy's a fucking maniac and I fucking hate him. He's everything I
It's turned out as a Spider-Man villain.
Yeah, like there you go. But like that doesn't happen very much in comic books. Like that kind of like hatred like that.
That animosity.
And it is really fucking awesome. And it leads into that Punisher Warzone, the Punisher versus Avengers, really well. And I love when he's talking about, like, of course, talking about killing or whatever. And Spider-Man says something about it. And Frank's like, well, everybody dies. And he goes, sometimes you even get to choose when. And I'm like, fuck. I had the same reaction Spider-Man did. I was like, Jesus Christ. But no, I mean, it's cool. You get Spider-Man in there, and I loved Daredevil in it. And you get a cool because they have the crossover.
There was
it
was 3 series crossover.
Yeah, the Avenging Spider-Man, Daredevil, and then the Punisher. I really enjoyed the Mark Waid, like the Daredevil issue.
Yeah,
I really liked the way
Mark Waid because it was his first time seriously sitting down and writing the Punisher. He was like, "Oh, he's like the easiest character ever. There's no arc. It's just like it's just the mission."
There. But I really enjoyed the way Daredevil was in the book overall, when Rucka wrote him, when Wade wrote him. I can't remember. I would assume it was the Daredevil issue because it's a very big Daredevil moment where he convinces Rachel not to kill somebody. The way he talks her down was fucking awesome. It was
like basically like we've all lost people.
Yeah. And then just I don't know. They it could have been very easy being like a Punisher story to kind of like write out the Spider-Man and Daredevil, but Daredevil comes off really strong in that entire run when he shows up, and I really enjoyed the three of them together, which was funny because it is a very different dynamic than the Marvel Knights Punisher with Garth Ennis.
Yeah.
Although he always, out of the, he doesn't really write Hulk that much in it, but out of the three, Wolverine, Punisher, Wolverine, Spider-Man, and Daredevil is written the most somewhat of a character. The other of them are kind of, Spider-Man's written
caricatures.
Spider-Man's written as a scared kid.
Yeah.
And like he said, he wrote Wolverine as basically a Looney Tunes character.
Yeah.
Get your kicks on Roots Snickety Stick. So,
shot in the dick.
Shot in the dick after having his face blown off. Well, yeah, because he has his face blown off and he's like chattering. He has no lips, and then he gets run over by a fucking steamroller, and he gets punched from New York to Boston by the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah,
which is pretty fucking funny. Anyway, so yeah, and then I started. I read the first 16 issues of. So I finished the Rucka, and then I read the first 16 issues of the Matt Fraction Punisher.
Oh yeah.
The book you let me you let me borrow, and then I do the Comixology Unlimited, so they have the first up to issue 16,
which is when Remender starts co-writing.
And then I read up to that point for like the borrowed free or whatever.
Don't you agree that it kind of like demystifies the Civil War?
Yeah,
moment?
I mean it's kind of weird because
he's like, well, he knows who actually won. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, like it's in the Civil War issue that Sam's mentioning. Frank, basically joins Team Captain America and comes in on a meeting and fucking mows down two like D-list villains.
Yeah, Goldbug and the Plunderer.
Yeah, they're like, hey, and he's like, no deals, and he guns them down. And like stunning art by Steve McNiven, fucking gorgeous. Like, I wish that dude drew the Punisher for like at least a 6-issue mini. I want to see that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think he did the covers for the Remender stuff, or some of them at least. There's that one of him standing in front of the. Because I started the Remender like Dark Reign stuff, or like him in the Century Fight or whatever. Anyway, I'm like all over the place, but yeah. So
that's a really good run too. The
Remender
stuff.
I'm really enjoying that so far. I get to Frankencastle, which I'm like, fuck it, I'm gonna read. I don't give a shit. I'll read the Frankencastle. The Punisher guns down these two D-list villains, and
Captain
Cap's
America
like,
just
you
loses.
Yeah, you murderous piece of trash, and fucking just beats the shit out of Frank
for like 3 pages.
Yeah, and he's like, fight me back, fight me back, fight me back, and Frank's like, no, not you. And then you get that kind of like, Spider-Man's like, what the fuck? As Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah. He is a New Yorker.
Yeah. And he's like, why didn't he fight back? He's like, you kidding me? Cap was probably...
That's a commission I need to get. An unmasked Spider-Man, and under the mask, it's Jerry Seinfeld, like the pompadour.
Yeah,
and everything.
flip.
I don't want to be Spider-Man.
Yeah. With great power comes great responsibility. Not really. Anyway, so yeah, Spider-Man's like, why didn't he fight back? And he's like, I forgot who tells him this. He's like, you kidding me?
They're the same guy, different war.
Yeah, he's like, Frank was probably his hero. Frank's probably the reason, or Cap's his hero. Cap's probably the reason he joined the military.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then in the Fraction one, it's much more like kind of like not sinister, but like
it's like I'm better than you because I didn't fight back.
Yeah, that Frank's and like they have like a little like backstory with like him at boot camp and like it's weird like because that moment in Civil War is such one of the few moments where like it's not Frank strangling some dude to death or blowing up a fucking bar and like doing this and like he is a quiet like respect moment that I really fucking love.
Yeah.
It's just a weird take.
Yeah.
It's a weird
alternate look.
Yeah, an expansion of that scene.
Yeah.
And then and the great thing is I go back and read Civil War and be like, no, it's this.
Yeah.
It's just that.
I like that run except for that moment.
Yeah, the run's pretty fascinating because
the funeral big funeral for a short man.
Yeah. Where he
that's my favorite issue in all of Fraction's run.
Yeah. What was the one in Fraction's run? Shit, there was one in particular that I really enjoyed and I'm blanking because like I finished
the Jigsaw stuff?
No, I basically finished the Rucka thing and then most of the Fraction stuff in one travel day, like on the flights. Fuck, I can't remember. There was like a specific single issue of the Fraction one that I was like, that was really fucking cool. Like I really, and the majority of the art on that is like that cool like painted style.
Ariel Olivetti.
Like
Frank's got
super jacked Frank, but I love his face.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the whole thing, but like
he's got the boxer's face.
I like that face, the widow's peak. You get the fucking white gloves and white boots, which is always classy as shit.
Which I mean, McNiven gives him that.
I mean, there's just something great about that. It makes zero sense, but there's something great about it. For that character, like he would time to suit up and be a superhero. I guess he has like Kraven's son. He has that little arc with Kraven's son, right?
He also goes south of the border with the Captain America cowl.
Yeah, the Captain America suit, and then he gives it to Bucky.
Yeah.
Which is a nice little thing here. I do enjoy... Oh, it was the issue where the cop is not really a cop. He's like... It was like post 9/11, and Bushwhackers there. And that one cop's like, this is my time to shine. And it's like a plastic gun. I'm like ruining this issue for people, but like it turns out he's not a cop really. He's like he's just like a helper or whatever.
Yeah.
And Frank's there, and I think the end of that issue is when they all look up at Times, like on the big jumbo screen, they see Cap's been assassinated.
Yeah. And
that's a moment where say whatever about the early stuff with like Frank and Captain America. I think trying to add just like a weird depth that again, like for the two of us, definitely we didn't buy or didn't like. But the moment where Frank looks up, he's like, "Oh no!"
Yeah,
and sees Cap dead.
His
like,
hero is
yeah,
dead.
yeah. That kind of brings it all back to that, and I appreciate like who the fuck like Captain America has to be the goddamn bee's knees for Frank Castle to be like, "All right, I respect you."
Yeah,
because like there's nobody else.
He's the best soldier.
Yeah, there's like nobody else, man.
He's the best soldier in history, and Frank Castle is a career soldier. He just got a completely different unauthorized mission.
I do also really like in the Punisher Warzone, but like I said, I'll just call it. There's so many Punisher Warzones. I'll call it Punisher vs. Avengers, the last Rucka or the end of the Rucka kind of wrap up thing, where him and Wolverine have a little like bond as soldiers too, where he's like, "Hey, the Avengers are coming." He's like, "Thanks," and he like basically takes the white phosphorus or whatever, or the incendiary. But I like how he deals, like especially with Thor.
Yeah.
They have like a beer together and stuff. It really, I mean, like, check out the Rucka stuff, man.
It's great.
If you have Comixology Unlimited, the first 3 volumes are on there. And then I just bought the Avengers one because I was just like so into the fucking.
Yeah, he's great. He really, I would have loved to have seen him do more, but Yeah, it was just never quite connected with the market, at least at the time when it was in single issue. But yeah, thanks again to John Layman for coming on the show, and keep an eye out for Leviathan and Outer Darkness out in comic book stores everywhere soon. This has been another installment of Catching Up. I'm Sam.
I'm Chris.
I'm Jake. Thank you very much.
Good night, Eric Bana.
Never said what I was doing this time.
This has been another Geek Out production. If you enjoyed what you heard, hey, we've got a special episode every Friday. Of course, there's the usual Catching Up show every Wednesday. And you get book club episodes just about every Tuesday these days. Thanks for listening.